Tanks in Overwatch 2 have been definitely the most impactful role throughout all the games we have seen in the Overwatch League playoffs, as well as just general ranked across the spectrum. So in today's video, we're going to be going into great detail for every single tank, and I'm going to be doing a full guide as to why certain tanks are good and why they are bad, why they're meta and why they're not. And I'm going to be giving them a rating from 1 all the way to 5 star based on their damage output, durability, so how much damage they can take, and overall support potential, right? That being all the abilities they have, their ults, etc. So as always, if you guys haven't done so already, make sure you guys do smash that subscribe button. I have been dishing out Overwatch content daily, ranging from guides on hero counters, on positioning, as well as supports and tanks. So definitely do check those out, and let's continue on with the video. Alright, we're going to be starting off with the main man of the evening, the hero pick that has been all over the Overwatch League playoffs. You guys probably guessed it just by what's on the screen here. We have Winston. That is right, not Winston, Winton, right? So Winston has definitely overcome so many obstacles since release. Some of those obstacles being that his competition in terms of tanks, as you guys are going to see throughout this video, are very, very high, and he's still able to manage to pull his own weight and just perform so well in so many games. Some of Winston's biggest attributes that have just enabled him to carry so hard on all these games that we have seen in the Overwatch League playoffs are his movement and abilities, right? So in general, a Winston is able to help his team dive pretty well as protect them with his shield bubble. Now the shield bubble can be used defensively as well as offensively, and I can do a whole guide on Winston, but we're going to keep it very short, sweet, and simple in today's video. So once again, let's say a Reaper were to go in with Death Blossom, you basically jump on that Reaper, so yes, you are risking your life there, but you throw that bubble around his Death Blossom, and with his reduced move speed, there really isn't much he can do, so you basically end up making his entire ult completely useless. Once again, same with the Sojourn ult or anything that just can dish out so much damage towards your team. Jump on them, bubble them, and they basically have to escape that. Now a Sojourn can easily slide out of it, so that's not really the best example there, but you guys pretty much get the point here in terms of the bubble. Now moving on to his Primal Rage ult is absolutely detrimental to any comp, right? He can jump in there, dish out a lot of damage, and most importantly, how it's actually been used by pros in the top tier meta is that they will jump on a very hard carry DPS, for example a Sojourn or Reaper, and they will push them back right out of position. So typically speaking, Primal Rage can actually help you put someone out of position, away from their support or tank or any protection, and you can just absolutely isolate them pretty hard. And most importantly, you can stall really well. A lot of people underestimate the stall potential that a Winston can do for your team to come back onto the payload for defense or for attack, just if you're on the overtime clock, right? So it definitely has a lot of benefits, and that's kind of why Winston is basically top tier meta right now, and his whole kit is very powerful. In terms of skill ceiling, it is very high. If you're a decent player, you can keep improving pretty much every single day, and you will never feel stagnant just because there's always something new to learn with Winston, especially his ult Primal Rage. So we're going to be giving him a very decent rating here, as you guys probably guessed it. Damage, probably not the most high, right? So we're going to give it a 4 out of 5, just because although he can do a lot of finishes, I mean, you're not going to be scared from a Winston based on his damage output, right? That's just not something that's going to happen. In terms of his support capability, if I can give it a 6 out of 5, I would, but unfortunately the max is a 5, so we're just going to give it a 5 out of 5. Then Winston's overall tankiness in terms of how much he can actually tank and damage he can take, like durability wise, we're going to give that a definite 5 out of 5. Besides his Primal Rage, his bubble does protect him. He's able to dash out of damage, so he can mitigate a lot of damage there. So in general, he is very, very powerful and has a kit with him that enables him in almost every single comp. Next up, we have Orisa. Now when it comes to Orisa, you do have to be very careful with how you can play, because although her kit is very simple, right, you can hop on Orisa pretty much on day 1 and figure out within 10 minutes, right? How you're supposed to use it is kind of what makes you a bad or a good tank on Orisa. So you're going to want to focus on your spear, right? How you aim that spear and how many shots you can hit. And trust me, it is the most satisfying thing to hit, especially, right, if the squishy is one shot and you can get a hit off of him. But typically speaking, it is very useful if you want to get a Reaper that's using Death Blossom away from your team, or you're trying to push someone who's diving onto your team. I think for creating space there, it is perfect. In terms of actually dishing out damage, it's probably not the best. It is good for getting finishes, but typically speaking, it is used for creating space. Now, general damage output in terms of the gun, I think Orisa is definitely top tier. right? You can dish out a lot of damage and land probably even more kills than your DPS if the other team is not carrying as well. And you can actually kill a lot of people, even if they're full HP on a DPS or a squishy. Just based on your DPS damage per second there, it does definitely do a lot of damage. Now, general abilities in terms of his shift or his E skill allows him to absolutely absorb damage, dash in, reflect or push off bullets, etc. You guys are probably familiar with the general way of using Orisa, are very powerful. Now I want to move on to the ult because I think that's kind of the main attribute of Orisa's kit, right? So when it comes to the ult, you definitely want to basically combo that with another ult. The ult itself does not do that much damage, right? It's more of a Zarya's grab. That's the best way I think about it, right? Obviously, if a squishy is one shot, they don't have shield or they're half HP, etc., they will get killed, right? But typically speaking, that's just not how it works, right? So when you use the ult, make sure you're comboing it with maybe a nano blade, a Genji on your team, or sojourns, right? Any type of ult that can dish out a lot of damage, it is perfect. You don't just want to rush in and use it because you probably won't get that many kills. It's just not how the ult works, and that's just typically how Orisa's play, especially if they are top tier. Now, in terms of the rating here, we're going to be giving Orisa damage-wise 5 out of 5. I think when it comes to tanks, she is definitely the one that dishes the most damage out and is very good at doing that. Now, actual durability, probably also a 5 out of 5. A good Orisa knows how to play around her cooldowns very well, around her team very well, and can be almost near impossible to kill. And typically speaking, if an Orisa is playing well, she is definitely always the last one to fall. 550 HP comboed with her absorb hits, with her shift and ease and alt, etc. She is very hard to kill, especially if she's getting pocketed by a Mercy or just getting healed very well by her supports. Now, general support capability, right? Cooldowns, skills, how she can actually help her team out, we're going to give that a 3 out of 5, right? Now, a lot of people might disagree, but I typically think, right, when it comes to top tier Overwatch League playoff skill level, where everyone is so mechanically gifted, Orisa does not provide that much protection for the team. She's more like a shield that's moving forward, absorbing shots, right, dishing out damage, kind of what a typical tank does. But in terms of, like, for example, your supports get dashed, she can't really do that much, right? Like a Winston can't jump on that, bubble it up, protect that support. That's just not there in terms of protection wise. So that's going to be a 3 out of 5. But in general, a very decent, well-rounded tank. And next up, we have Zarya. So when it comes to Zarya, she is definitely, without a doubt, a very top-tier tank, and there really isn't much explaining to do, right? So I'm gonna actually focus on the negatives, right? So that's something you probably guys didn't expect because she is generally very powerful. Her bubbles allow her to pretty much negate any type of ult that is extremely dangerous, or any type of hook, or anything that can just kill her. She just has to bubble up, or even bubble her teammates, and the cooldown before the nerf that's coming very soon from the time you guys are seeing this video hasn't hit yet, so the bubbles do have a very decent cooldown for her, so she can work around her abilities very well. But in general, what I think Zarya lacks is movement. So movement is definitely one of Zarya's biggest weaknesses, right? Typically speaking, she is basically like a moving tank, like an actual literal tank, right? She can't jump around, right? She can't dash forward or backwards or anything. All she can do is go into her bubbles, soak up damage, charge up, and beam enemies down, right? Now, typically speaking, if you guys are playing in the low ranks, this works, or even the higher ranks, this works, right? But when you're playing top tier, mechanical, right, extremely high skilled players, they can work around that very easily, right? Basically, they'll dash the healers in the back and they'll wipe them out, and then they'll focus on the Zarya, right? Zarya isn't able to help out her teammates as much in terms of movement, and her mobility is very limited, which is why when it comes to this dive focused meta that we're seeing right now in Overwatch 2, she lacks a lot of skills there, and you pretty much did not see her in the Overwatch League finals or playoffs or anything, and people were mainly playing Sigma, Winston, or any tank that has a lot of mobility because that's just what works. So in terms of damage here, she obviously gets a 5 out of 5, right? Now after the nerf, we'll see how that goes in terms of how much damage she's able to absorb with the cooldowns increased, etc. So, but for now, she definitely dishes a lot of damage, probably more than everyone or anyone wants her to do at the moment. Durability, she also probably gets a 5 out of 5 with her bubbles. If you guys work around the cooldowns very well and you're careful, she can be very troubling to kill. And typically speaking, you don't focus a Zarya in a fight, right? When you have a big team fight, Zarya is probably the least of your concerns, just because if you focus her, she'll just absorb more damage, especially if she has her bubbles timed properly, and she just doesn't die easily, and she's able to beam you, so you typically don't focus her first. That puts her durability at a 5 out of 5. Now her support and team carrying potential in terms of her abilities there, she definitely gets a 5 out of 5. So all around, she's a 5 out of 5 star hero, and she does very well. Alright, we're going to be going over Roadhog next. Now when it comes to Roadhog, he's honestly one of my favorite tanks, and I don't really see him play that much, even though he's very good. And the reason being, I think he's a very, not awkward, but an interesting kit that he has, right? A lot of people don't really feel comfortable playing him, even though I think it's very simple. You pretty much have a hook, you have an E skill that heals you, and that's all you gotta work with, right? That's literally all you gotta work with. Is nothing complicated. So in terms of a guy there really isn't much to know besides to know how much you can hook, and I think that's kind of the hardest thing when it comes to a Roadhog. Knowing your distances, right? The most embarrassing thing is when you see a hero across the screen from you and you throw a hook and it doesn't even reach them, but you thought it was going to reach them. That's kind of the only embarrassing moments you'll have on a Roadhog. And other than that, it's very simple. Now, his ult is a little bit hard to control. I'll say that for sure, because it does boop all enemies back and it does kind of make your screen shake all over the place, etc. So definitely do check those settings out and make sure you guys do mitigate those. But in general, he's a very simple to play hero. In terms of his general kit, right, he's able to dish out a lot of damage. For sure. He can one-shot all squishies if he does time it right, but I'm still going to give him a 4 out of 5 on damage, not a 5 out of 5, just because it's not very consistent, right? When it comes to me rating or giving proper feedback on heroes, especially tanks, I do want consistency, right? I want consistent damage, right? So if you land a hook and you one-shot, to me that's not consistent damage, right? Because if you miss that hook, how much damage can you dish out? Now, when it comes to a Roadhog, that's not much, right? For sure, especially from a distance. So you definitely do have to pay attention to that. Now, actual durability here for Roadhog, he definitely gets a 5 out of 5. He is very hard to kill and is very tanky, especially if he's getting pocketed, right? Just imagine him getting healed and you're like, oh, finally, okay, we got rid of that 700 HP. He just uses his E skill, which has an 8-second cooldown, and he can keep spamming it, and he can keep basically just spamming his E skill and getting healed, pocketed, etc. And he's almost impossible to kill, especially if the supports are still up. So he's definitely up there when it comes to durability. Now, general support skills and how much he's able to contribute to the team as a tank, he'll definitely get a 3 out of 5, right? I don't think he's able to protect his supports or DPS as much, right? He can one-shot a lot of people, get in front and dish out damage, but can he protect a support that got dove? He probably can't. The best he can do is try to hook that enemy that dove them, but if he misses, that's all he's got in his kit, right? So that's something you definitely do have to pay attention to, that he's not very good at supporting the team, but he is able to tank. Once again, I mean, that is a very important thing to do, right, as a tank. And he's able to dish out decent damage with one-shot capability, but he doesn't have that support factor there. All right, moving on to Reinhardt. Reinhardt is a very good tank. That's kind of what I want to start my review on him with. He's all around very well at protecting his team, dishing out decent damage, and in general very good cooldowns, very good skills. He can smash the ground, put everybody to sleep, and that can be comboed with almost anything, and it's quite easy to land pretty much, right? But in general, you do have to pay attention to something that is very important. He is a melee only tank, and that definitely does matter, right? So in general, when it comes to this dive meta, all enemy heroes, right, or your teammates heroes, etc., pretty much everyone in the around the spectrum, they use heroes that have a lot of mobility, right? So when you're playing with a Reinhardt, you need to understand that for you to land your regular melee hits with dish a lot of damage, or general hits in general, it's going to be very hard for you because enemies are flying around the sky. They're basically positioning on the top ground or the high ground. So definitely do check out my previous guide where I talk about positioning. I cover it for every single role, and it has a lot of good tips for you guys there. But in general, Reinhardt does struggle quite a bit because he's melee only. But if we were to give him a rating in terms of damage, we'll give him a 4 out of 5. It is very good, and he can definitely one-shot by pushing you against the wall and smashing your skull in, or his basically put you to sleep skill, right? His ult can definitely be comboed with a lot of things and is very powerful. But in general, it's not very consistent, right? Like, for example, Roadhog can deal consistent damage. So that is basically there for him. Basically, a Roadhog can't dish out consistent damage, which is why they both get a few points deducted there from the damage side. I do like to see consistency, especially when it comes to tanks. General durability, I don't really see him as very durable compared to the rest, right? He can still die quite easily, especially if his shield goes down and his supports are away. He is very easy to kill. His movement is pretty much little to non-existent. He just has to run back or use his ult. That's the best thing he can do. So that definitely does put him down there. And I'll give him on durability basically a 2 or a 3 out of 5. Let's give him a 2.5 out of 5 there. Support skills and capability and how he's able to dish out and help out the team there, we'll give it a 4 out of 5. I think overall he's very well. His shield does help you, especially if a D.Va's in front of you and your team is behind you. She uses her ult. You can definitely pop that and protect your team. So in general, he does have a lot of protection for the team. But in terms of damage, he definitely does struggle there. In terms of durability, he does struggle there a bit. Moving on to D.Va next. Now, when it comes to D.Va, I don't really see her as a tank. Unfortunately, unfortunately, you guys can probably beg to differ here, and I know I'm gonna get a lot of annoying comments based on my coverage of D.Va. You guys know I don't really like D.Va, just because when I see a D.Va on my team tanking, I don't really feel protected. I'm sorry, but that's just the reality. Can she dish out damage? Yes, most definitely, right? But that's not a tank's role. So she's in this awkward position where I think when it comes to low ranks, now pay attention to this, right? When it comes to low ranks, she is very good because people don't know how to play around her cooldowns or missiles or dash in, etc. skills. But when it comes to high ranks, she isn't able to protect her team that much, right? Besides dashing in, soaking up damage, and pretty much having outside her right click, right, which basically allows her to soak up all the damage out there and pretty much suck up everything off the ground like a vacuum, she doesn't really provide that much protection for the team and is quite squishy, actually, believe it or not, right? Like she does have decent amount of health, right? Around 700 HP is very powerful, but you also have to take into account the fact that pretty much she basically, without her right click, is quite squishy, can take a lot of damage, and doesn't have a lot of skills that allow her to pretty much protect herself outside that right click there, right? But in general, a very decent kit. She's able to fly around. Her movement and mobility is definitely top tier, right? So in terms of durability there, I do give her a 4 out of 5 just because of her movement. She's able to dash in, dash out, right? And her ult is absolutely insane, so that does definitely boost her damage. And then when it comes to support capability, overall in general, not too bad, not too shabby, but I do give that a 2 out of 5, even though I said it's not too bad or too shabby, just because she can't really protect her team that much outside soaking up damage with her right click, right? Once that basically goes on cooldown, your teammates are pretty much open to any damage that's coming, and you pretty much just have to run away, dash out, but they're back there, right? So even though you can escape as a D.Va, your teammates cannot escape. Now, once again, do let me know if you guys agree with this. If you guys think D.Va is a great tank in terms of protecting her team, I just don't see her as a tank that can protect her team. A tank that can dish out damage and has a nice ult, definitely. But can she protect her team in a high-skilled, mechanically top-tier game like Overwatch League playoffs? Most definitely not. And we move on to the next one, which is probably one of my favorite ones, just because it is quite the hero to play, right? We have Wrecking Ball. Now, Wrecking Ball is basically a stall machine. That's honestly all Wrecking Ball is going to be able to do. And soak up a bunch of damage, move around. So he's kind of like Winston if Winston was a ball and didn't do much. That's basically what Wrecking Ball is, right? The ult is quite powerful. You do definitely want to drop it around the payload, especially if you're on overtime, and it can definitely get a lot done in terms of value there. But in general, Wrecking Ball mostly strives off his kit based on being able to stall for a bit, right? So you hook onto that payload and you keep twisting around and around and around, and the enemy team is trying to kill you and they can't catch you off guard, and your teammates come back and then you slap your ult down, you keep twisting around, you hit them off point, you push them off, and you C9 them pretty much, right? Get them off the payload. But in general, in terms of damage, I mean, I'm not really afraid of a Wrecking Ball attacking me, right? I mean, if I'm one shot, then I'm one shot. But in general, a Wrecking Ball won't be able to dish out that much damage. The ult definitely can one shot a lot of squishies if you do hit it by accident and you're not paying attention. So damage wise, I'm going to give Wrecking Ball a 3 out of 5. Now when it comes to durability, definitely a 5 out of 5. Wrecking Ball is very hard to kill, especially if you are mechanically gifted, know how to hook and basically fly around the map, and it's quite exciting. You guys definitely do have to try it out. But in general, durability is a 5 out of 5 for sure. And support capability, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Wrecking Ball, once again, can't provide protection for the team. So that's my criteria for this rating here. How can you as a tank protect your team, right? Now, people are not going to be happy with my previous D.Va rating, but in general, a D.Va can't really protect her teammates that much. But overall, once again, Wrecking Ball is a fun hero to play. Will I play it if I'm playing in the league playoffs, or, you know, I'm playing a high-ranked game and I care about my SR and MMR? Probably not, but if I want to have fun with the boys on a Saturday night, definitely I will play Wrecking Ball. That's basically the space Wrecking Ball is in. Alright, next we have Junker Queen. Now, Junker Queen is a very, very good tank in general, in my opinion, right? So, her kit overall gives her a lot of movement. That's something I definitely look for in this dive-heavy meta. And in general, she can dish out quite a bit of damage. Is very tanky, right? She only has 425 HP, which I think is pretty much on the low side when it comes to tank HP. And you're kind of nearing a very tanky DPS health pool, right? So you do have to be careful health wise. She can take out a lot of damage, but her kit allows her to actually mitigate most of that damage, right? Her shotgun can dish out pretty nice damage, and if you jump on the backline of your enemy team, you can catch a lot of them off guard and just do a lot of damage. In general, her dagger is very fun because it does hit them and then pushes them towards her, so it kind of like hooks to them and just pulls them forward, so you can catch people a lot. And then her E skill just basically is kind of like a Reinhardt smackdown, where you just pull out a hammer, just slap people across the face. And her shift allows her to gain some move speed, a little bit of extra health. So overall, a very good kit. definitely not top tier, but also definitely not bottom tier. She's kind of just in between, right? So in general, damage wise, she gets a 3 out of 5. Nothing too crazy, nothing too bad there. Her durability is also 3 out of 5. She doesn't have that much health. As you guys can see, she is very easy to kill, right? 425 on a tank, especially on a meta where damage is so high, is not that much. And in terms of her ult, right, it once again is probably one of the most underwhelming ults in my opinion. So that kind of puts her support capability wise at a 2 out of 5 there, just because I mean dashing in, right, spinning something around the air and just running into the enemy team or the backline of them isn't really accomplishing all that much, and you pretty much kind of die afterwards unless the enemy team is already gonna die anyways. So it is a very risky ult to use in my opinion. It does create some space there, it does help you positioning wise around the map, but in general it doesn't really provide that much value in terms of protecting your team or supporting them. So she definitely does get a 2 out of 5 there. So once again, 3, 3, and a 2. So not too great of a rating, but in general I do think she's a lot of fun. Definitely play her, try her out, and do let me know if I'm wrong there with my rating, but that's just how I see it in terms of what she's up against some of the top tier tanks we have in this meta. Next up is definitely a very interesting tank, one that you guys definitely have to try out because I've tried him out and he's so much fun, and he actually dishes out so much damage a lot of people don't really notice it, right? We have a Sigma. Now Sigma isn't just able to dish out a lot of damage, he's actually able to do a lot to the team and CC them, and he's very good at crowd control. That's why I see him as very powerful. Once again, he's able to soak up damage with his shift skill. His right click puts up a shield, but the nice thing about it is that you can put the shield and position it wherever you want, right? So if you're far away, you can kind of block off an enemy choke point or exit, and you pretty much just spam your hits, right? Your left clicks, and dish out as much damage as you can. So you can definitely get on a lot of people's nerves. Shift allows you to absorb damage, so you're very tanky, and 550 HP is a decent health pool in general, right? Not on the high side compared to 700 health, Roadhogs, etc. But in general, a very decent hero. Has a nice kit. His ult is very powerful as well, comboed with pretty much anything. And if you have decent aim, you can raise the enemy team up, hit them with your left clicks, and pretty much combo with any of your teammates' ults, and you can wipe out the entire team. So in general, a very well-rounded hero, and for that, I'm going to give him a 4 out of 5 across the board, right? Damage, definitely 4 out of 5. Support capability, 4 out of 5. And durability, also 4 out of 5, right? Not the most broken, so that's kind of what a 5 out of 5 would result in, but definitely a very good, well-rounded hero in general, and overall a very good tank. And we actually did see him being played in the Overwatch League playoffs, so he definitely does have something to show and bring to the table there. And last but surely not least, we're going to be finishing off with a Doomfist. Now when it comes to Doomfist, he is in a very terrible spot, and I'm very sorry for anyone that plays him because he's pretty much not really keeping up with the tanks nowadays. Now something you guys do need to understand, that back in Overwatch 1 when there was 2 tanks, right? Trust me, no one wants that back because everyone hated the double shield meta pretty much. In general, Doomfist did kind of carry his own wave because there was another tank, right? And he was able to actually dish out damage, jump in there, put enemies off position while the other tank tanked for the team. But now that there's only one tank, his kit just doesn't really square up with the other tanks in this meta, right? Not that there's only one tank, which is why I made a video previously calling this the tank meta, right? That we moved from a 6v6 to a 5v5. Tanks are so crucial in every game, and why this guide is very useful for you guys. Doomfist just can't really pull his own weight, and no one plays him. When I say no one, I mean a no one, right? There's someone by the name of no one that probably plays him, right? But in general, right, let's dive into the actual skills. His ult can save him, allows him to teleport if he falls off the map, right? W there, I guess, but that's pretty much it. Jumps there where he can spawn, dish out damage right where he spawned, and in general, he can have a lot of movement around the map. He can push in, push out. Left click isn't that powerful, can dish out a decent amount of damage, but in general, his whole kit is basically a 50-50, right? It's hit or miss. You can obviously play with him and win a game, just like you can pretty much win with any hero. But in general, I definitely wouldn't bet on him moving forward with the meta, just because we're moving into a dive heavy meta and there's only one tank right now. Him versus all the other tanks, he can't really square up once again. So I will definitely give him damage wise 3 out of 5. You guys probably expected it to be lower, but he can definitely dish out some decent damage there. His support capability, outstanding, 1 out of 5 there. And then his durability in general, we'll give it a 2 out of 5. So in general, he can't really protect the team that much. He can dish out okay damage, but he cannot support the team as well as some of the other tanks. So in general, he does get a very low rating there. But yeah, that's pretty much gonna wrap up today's video on this Overwatch 2 tank guide. In general, I just wanted to kind of give a rating, what I think about every single hero. Now, obviously, I didn't really explain how you can play every single hero, but if you guys want to see that, I can definitely make a tank guide where I actually go into detail how you want to play every single hero, how you want to position around the map, and general movement and tactics. But I just wanted to kind of focus on what is meta currently, give them a rating just so you guys know how you guys can use those heroes. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed, definitely do consider subscribing because I have a lot of guys on my channel, so definitely do check those out. Do let me know what you guys want to see in the future. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and as always, enjoy Overwatch.